Hello, it's Jason again. We've been talking up to this point about the de-spiritualization of our modern times. I'm going to do a quick review before we totally shift into what next, right? So we've talked about how we seem to intuit that there is something unique about mankind. That one, we differentiate between nature and man. There's the natural and there's the man-made. We don't do it with other animals. We don't say natural and bee-made or ant-made. But for man-made we do. And that's because man can manipulate nature in different ways. And man has a great uniqueness to him. And in that, we see that man does more damage to nature than any other animal. And it's not even close. Because we're kind of not a part of nature in some ways, it feels like. Even though our bodies are made of the same type of material as other mammals. We share a lot of genetic markers. But maybe there's something about us that isn't simply just DNA, something that's not physical. We also notice that we have free will, or we intuit this. Or at least at the very least, we deeply desire it, I think, to have free will, to believe that we are choosing based on our own abilities to reason, or perhaps on our desires, on greed or higher desires. We have a desire to be noble. We should make choices based on that. Whatever the reason we make our choices, we do believe we're making choices. And I covered how, scientifically speaking, the idea of free will is not very well supported from a merely physical view of mankind. If we are nothing but the most highly evolved animal on this planet, then we are, after all, simply material that follows all the laws of physics, including our brains. And so we might have I think a lot of scientists would say we have the illusion of free will, and they'd have to go into some long argument about how the illusion of free will was evolutionarily beneficial to us or something. So it was naturally beneficial to be lied to by nature into thinking we have free will when we don't, because that was beneficial. But we mostly intuit that no, free will is actually a real thing. And we see this by the way we run our societies and the way we judge people. We believe people have choices that they make. And because there are choices to be made, there are judgments to be made about whether or not those were good or bad choices. And finally, we also saw that we believe man has a spirit because we have such a high valuation of even the individual. Not just a high valuation of our species, that we're the most advanced species on the planet, even ahead of mice and dolphins. But we also believe that within the species, the individual is so important that we cannot do terrible things to individual humans, even if we felt or convinced that would be the best thing for the species or the best thing for our society. This is because we believe the individual human is of great value simply because they're a human being. And we believe this, in my opinion, because we know that the human being has a spirit. The human being has the touch of God upon them, one might say, or bears the image of God, the Bible would say, correct? Anyway, we have this high view of man. We believe we have free will. We treat man as different from nature, and the man-made is delineated from the natural, distinguished from the natural, I should say. And all these add up to the idea that we believe we're different because we have something different about us, and that something is our spirit. It also accounts very well for free will, that there's a non-physical part of us involved in our decision-making, and therefore it is free from the laws of physics to influence us or to direct us in our paths. Now, we also talked about why we are becoming less spiritual. Of course, I think most people would agree, whether you even agree with the word spiritual or not, most would agree that our increased amount of time spent online is definitely affecting the way we treat each other. If you don't like the word spiritual or not, I think you would agree with that part at least. That by not seeing people, by not knowing much about them, by only knowing a few of their ideas and a few of their memes shared, we make snap judgments and we treat them not so well. And it's much easier to misportray yourself online. And as I mentioned before, we're getting to the point where we can't even be sure if the person we're dealing with has a spirit, because it could be a bot. Um, and people even have probably multiple online personas where they troll and do all sorts of things. And so we've kind of hardened our hearts, and we often view the online world as not the people we encounter online is not deserving of the kind of respect we hopefully show people in real life. Another thing, of course, that we've seen is that the internal reason to become less spiritual is if I see others as less spiritual, I can treat them as objects. I don't have to give them the respect. That way I can have my way and not have to worry about their way. I can follow my dream and not worry if it's hurting their dream, because I can just view them as objects either in my way or objects that can be used to further my dream. And I can look at myself as less spiritual because if there's a part of me that I don't feel like examining, if there's a part of me that I am tired of fighting with, I can throw up my hands and say, well, I don't choose that. That's just who I am. And by doing that, by categorizing a part of my life as saying this part of my life is unchoosable, it's just who I am, that absolves me from self-introspection. It absolves me from the criticisms of others. It absolves me from the hard work of deciding what is right and what's wrong, and the even harder work of choosing right over wrong. All that is gone because I've denied myself the power of free will in that area of my life, and have just said, no, that's just who I am in that particular area of my life, and I didn't choose it. I can't choose it. So you can't judge me, and I'm not going to do anything about it. And there's something freeing about this in a sense, but of course, every time you give up a piece of free will, you're giving up a part of your humanness. You're giving up a part of your humanity. And we're not seeing that, I don't think. I think it's a real problem. And finally, one of the biggest reasons I mentioned, and this is, what's the word? It's depicted a lot in science fiction, is that we trust too much in science. I'm not saying we shouldn't trust science for physical things. Science is great for physical things. And if you have any physical problem, see a doctor. Because we've done a lot of studies on the physical body, and the science is a great method for studying things physical. Maybe the only valid way to study the physical realm is by science. And therefore, it's done an amazing job of observing the physical world, figuring out how to deal with that physical world, how to improve that physical world, whether it's things around us like our more, like I said, safer cars or better materials, and or the things dealing directly with us like medicines and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. Science is a great way to understand the physical world and deal with the physical. However, what many science fiction stories show or try to show is that if we take it to an extreme, the problem, we always see these futuristic societies where things are terrible, even though they've used a lot of science and a lot of logic, but somehow it's awful. And the reason for that is simple, because we're not simply physical beings. And so by turning only to science and logic, we are ignoring not just a part of us, but what might be the most human part of us, our spirit, that which makes us human. And if we ignore that, we shouldn't be surprised if we see a future where people are more and more dehumanized and become more like cattle or like automatons. And you can just pick from all the science fiction out there that examine future societies of humans how this plays out. And everyone who's writing this is intuiting there's some reason that we can't just apply all of our great scientific knowledge and logic and go from there and solve all of our problems, because it doesn't actually solve all the problems because, and they might not say this, but this is my conclusion, because we're not merely physical. And to use science for everything is to deny that the spirit exists, and that's a problem all in its own, to deny the spirit exists. But that's what we do if we think science is going to solve all of our depression and all of our anxieties, all of our greediness and our lustfulness and our discontent. If we think science is going to solve all that, we're basically saying we don't have spirits, and science will solve it all. And to a degree, it's a form of laziness, really. It's a form of, like I said, it's a form of, I don't want to work on myself. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to judge myself. I don't want to do that kind of hard work of self-examination and discovering what's right and wrong and choosing right over wrong despite my desires. Maybe there's just a pill I can take or a procedure I can undergo that will make us all wonderful human beings. But every time we actually try to explore that idea through science fiction, it's always awful, just awful. And we know that. So that's the review. So if we do have a spirit and we are ignoring it and all these problems are coming our way or they're growing, what do we do? What do we do to attend to our spirit, to give attention to our spirit, to nourish our spirit, to nurture our spirit? What do we do? How do we become spiritually healthy? How do we acknowledge our spirits? And what do we do to make them run well? I should mean run isn't the best word, but thrive and live in health. Well, I'm going to speed up a little bit because it might take a long time to get through this if I was very thorough, but I think it's more imperative, considering how important this topic is, to kind of to speed up to this part of what do we do. Well, some of those things we mentioned before that help us to believe we have a spirit, what it means to be dehumanized. I think one common factor of all that is the idea of love. Okay, first of all, free will. Most morality, free will brings up the idea of morality because free will brings up the idea of, okay, if we have choices, how do we decide what choices are the best choices, right? Choices can be judged. Okay, so how do we judge choices? Well, there's lots of different theories and lots of different ethics philosophies out there. But one of the common threads usually is the concept of love. If we make choices based on loving others, we'll make better choices. We'll make more moral choices, more human choices. We'll treat people with humanity. And basically, when we talk about treating people with humanity or humanely, we mean giving them the respect that they're due simply for being a human. Human recognizes human. And as a result, they treat them with the importance that a human should have. And it has a lot to do with respect or even a form of love where we don't want to see another human suffer. We want instead to at least not add to their suffering and not cheer on their suffering. That's the very bottom line. But generally, we should even want them to have a good life, to enjoy good comfort and enjoy good health. That we should want that for other human beings. And that's the basic of most ethics. And a lot of it is really just loving people as people, meaning we know that just as I have a dream, they have a dream. Just as I have fears, they have fears. And this is why the golden rule of doing to others what you would have them do to you is the very basic kind of love. It's like, okay, I'm a human, they're a human, so I should definitely treat them with the same kind of respect, the same kind of care, the same kind of concern that I would like to be treated with. So we're going to talk about love next time. Love, there's lots of phrases about love, right? Love makes the world go round. Love conquers all. We've got a lot of phrases about love. Everyone sings about love and writes about love, and there's whole genres about love in romantic comedies and all these things that explore the idea of love. But do we really know what love, the love that feeds the soul, the love that addresses the spirit, do we really know what that love is? Because if love is really important, if the spirit is important, and love is important for the spirit, we have to have a clear idea of what love actually is. So I'm going to talk about that next time.